For as long as humanity has recorded details of its existence, there have been accounts of mysterious objects in the skies, and equally as long as this is the effort to understand just what they are. We tend to associate UFOs and ufology as a new phenomenon, but in reality this is not the case, and throughout history, scholars, academics and religious leaders have tried to interpret what people have seen based on their own beliefs and knowledge. What made the 20th century and now the 21st century so unique, however, is that for the first time we have not been confined to merely recording the accounts of those who claim to have witnessed something in the heavens. The revolution in photographic and video technology meant that now every one of us could bear witness to an event that in the past only 1 or 2 people would have seen. As long-time followers of this channel, and our parent channel Top 5s can attest to, as a result of the wide array of methods of recording events available to each and every one of us, and the ability to share such recordings, the internet is saturated with mysterious videos for our fascination to feast upon. However, for those interested in researching the UFO phenomena, this ability to record sightings has in fact led to even greater frustration among members of the investigative community, be they having only a passive interest in the topic or have devoted their lives to uncovering the truth. That frustration emanates from authorities and the wider public, who at times are seemingly unwilling to accept that what they are looking at is genuinely mysterious, or even for a moment consider that the origin of these objects could be extraterrestrial or even trans-dimensional, as some have theorized. The situation has not been helped by a flood of hoaxes and misidentifications that at times often overshadow genuine video footage, or worse, gets genuine footage labelled as such. Therefore, for many UFO investigators, the ultimate search has perhaps not been for the next sighting, but rather has been the search for recognition from the wider public and authorities especially, that they accept that in the end, to paraphrase William Shakespeare, there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in their philosophy. As we enter the second decade of the 21st century, it appears that in some official circles there is a wind of change regarding sightings made of unusual objects in our skies, and the recognition that something beyond our current understanding is happening. Could we be on the verge of uncovering the smoking gun of UFO sightings? Let's examine some of the cases that even the United States Department of Defense admits are authentic and genuinely unexplained. Welcome to Destination Declassified. On April 8, 2021, filmmaker, UFO investigator and friend of the channel, Jeremy Corbell, released details on his website, extraordinarybeliefs.com, regarding this more open-minded approach that US defense experts were taking regarding UFOs, or as they term them, UAPs, meaning unidentified aerial phenomena. Jeremy explained that he was made aware of at least 2 high-level briefings held by the US intelligence community that, as well as sharing information on UAPs cited by military personnel, were intended to destigmatize UAPs as a topic of discussion and analysis. Without the hindrance of this stigma, more military personnel would likely be willing to come forward and report their encounters, and it would also help address perhaps the biggest question on the lips of many military commanders who encounter UAPs. Are they a threat? Jeremy explained in his post that whenever he receives military footage, it is often put at the top of the pile for publishing, because of the general high quality and detail that often accompanies them. Furthermore, military personnel are considered very reliable witnesses, for they are trained observers of aircraft of all type, and thus they would be less likely to misidentify a regular aircraft, drone, or known atmospheric phenomena. However, Jeremy is also keenly aware of the possibility the cases are hoaxes, or that the information behind them is inaccurate, leading to him and his colleague George Knapp conducting exhausting and often frustrating background checks through an array of contacts the two have built up over many years. Once the details had been confirmed, Jeremy was satisfied enough to release the details of 3 intriguing, mysterious, and authentic military encounters with UAPs. Let's take a look. In July 2019, the 6,800-ton US Navy destroyer USS Russell was sailing approximately 100 miles off the Californian coastline, in company with at least 4 other warships, all in close proximity. While a relatively tiny force by US Navy standards, between them, the 5 warships had more advanced sensors and greater firepower than most small navies. At 2156 hours on July 14, 2019, an unusual entry was made in the log of the USS Kidd, operating within the flotilla. It simply read, "Away Snoopy, team of 2 UAVs." In layman's terms, this entry refers to the use of the Kidd's Snoopy team, which stands for Ship's Nautical or otherwise Photographic Interpretation and Exploration Team, to investigate 2 unmanned aerial vehicles or drones the vessel's lookouts had sighted. The Snoopy team was unable to identify the object, and so as a precaution, the USS Kidd increased its security status and alerted the nearby US Navy vessel USS RAFAEL PERALTA, who took similar measures as well as alerting their own Snoopy team. Less than 15 minutes after the USS Kidd's initial sighting, a third vessel, the USS John Finn, also made visual contact with what they believed were drones of unknown origin. Crew members on the John Finn later spotted a red flashing light moving off in the distance, while on board the RAFAEL PERALTA, a white light was observed passing high over the vessel's flight deck on the aft section of the vessel, matching the destroyer's speed of 16 knots. From start to finish, the incident lasted a total of 90 minutes, in excess of what most commercially available drones would be capable of, meaning if they were simply drones, they were advanced types, most likely military in nature, and obviously not belonging to the US Navy. However, this event was only the start. The next night, on July 15th, the US warships were again the setting for a series of sightings, this time beginning with the crew of the USS RAFAEL PERALTA, spotting them first at 20:39 hours, followed by USS Kidd over 20 minutes later. The USS Kidd began tracking the object that had surrounded the vessel with its Mark 87 electro-optical detector, which is used to help aim the ship's 5-inch gun mounted in a turret on the foredeck. It was at this time that the USS Russell had its encounter with the strange objects, and this encounter would be revealed in a truly intriguing piece of footage uncovered by Jeremy. The Snoopy team on board the Russell recorded the objects undertaking a variety of maneuvers over and near the warship, quickly changing direction, speed and altitude. Focusing in on the objects over the Russell, they appeared to take on a pyramid shape when viewed through the night vision goggles used by the observation teams. Both the Russell and the RAFAEL PERALTA observed the objects, apparently monitoring them for up to 3 hours before the last sighting was made. The radio operator aboard the RAFAEL PERALTA contacted nearby vessels regarding the objects, including the cruise ship Carnival Imagination, hoping to confirm that they were simply drones operated by tourists, but the cruise ship denied that any passengers had launched any drones. Summarizing the video, Jeremy wrote this in his post. What's presented here is genuine UFO/UAP footage, evidence with impressive provenance. These are images and videos shot by our US military during a variety of UAP encounters, incursions by advanced transmedium vehicles of unknown origin, interacting and observing our Navy's warships, and fleet deployment in a restricted airspace. The night vision and FLIR technologies represented in this content, in this case, are tied into some of the most sophisticated weapon systems known to humankind. The evidence here must be differentiated from other UAP documentation due to the context of capture alone. Immediately following this incident, the US Navy launched an investigation and began talks with the US Coast Guard to determine what ships and boats were in the immediate area that could have been the source of the drones. One of the vessels of immediate interest in the investigation was the ORV Alguta, a 50-foot catamaran. And while it was discovered that the vessel had drones on board, they were too primitive to have the range, endurance, and performance of the objects viewed by the US warships. Furthermore, reviewing the radar and transponder tapes for the nights in question, while the catamaran was close to the scene of the sighting on the first night, the vessel was significantly further west on the second night during the Russell sighting, and so it was eliminated from the investigation. The Navy, Coast Guard, and the FBI continued their inquiries for several weeks, but do not appear to have come to any conclusions regarding the object's origins or intentions. While the investigation was still going on, the USS Kidd would have a repeat performance of the objects, demonstrating their flight abilities, when crew members on board observed them first on July 25th, and then again on July 30th. The submerging sphere. The second case highlighted by Jeremy concerns a sighting made by the US warship USS Omaha. Stills from the vessel's onboard infrared camera show it tracking a small spherical object, which the Omaha crew described as a UAS, or unmanned aerial system, descending until it appears to hit the water and submerge. However, at the time, the crew aboard did not observe any splash, and it was only reasoned afterwards that it had entered the water since it was not seen increasing altitude. Because of the seemingly unnatural way that the object appears to enter the water, Jeremy has labelled the object as a transmedium vehicle. A transmedium vehicle is a term coined by UFO investigators that concern objects that apparently have the ability to pass through solid, or in this case liquid objects or bodies with ease, and without sustaining any damage. A rather dramatic demonstration of the transmedium vehicle phenomena set the internet alight in 2013, and gives us an idea of what the crew aboard the USS Omaha may have seen. On April 26, 2013, pilots flying out of Aguadilla Airport in Puerto Rico began reporting sightings of a strange object flying around the airport, and this prompted the diversion of a US Customs and Border Protection aircraft to investigate. Using the aircraft's forward-looking infrared or FLIR pod, the crew on board the plane observed the object enter and leave the ocean below at great speed, and apparently without influencing the water or taking any damage from such a high-speed impact. The third case in the briefings concerned an incident that occurred on March 4, 2019, and involved the intercepting of 3 separate objects that were apparently monitoring US Navy exercises off the East Coast. The exercises involved a number of Boeing FA-18F Super Hornet multi-role fighter aircraft, operating within a secure piece of airspace known as W-72, located adjacent to the coasts of Virginia and North Carolina. Little is known about the details of the sightings, and when the first image was leaked and then released by Jeremy's associate George Knapp in 2020, it was believed that the incident occurred in 2018. What is known is that during the exercise, the pilots became aware of objects in their vicinity and raced to investigate. With the FA-18F being a 2-seater aircraft, it allowed the weapons system operator in the rear of the cockpit to take out his own mobile phone and snap pictures of the objects. The first image leaked to the public appears to show an inverted pyramid-like object that appeared to hover motionless over the ocean, even as the FA-18 raced by. Some have speculated that the object is in fact a GPS dropsonde, a small device dropped from aircraft and which slowly falls to Earth, suspended under an often triangular-shaped parachute. These devices are commonly used by organizations such as the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the US Air Force's Hurricane Hunter aircraft for monitoring weather patterns in an effort to predict the formation of hurricanes. However, in the case of the object photographed by the weapons officer of the FA-18F, there is no dropsonde suspended below what is suspected to be the parachute to weigh it down, yet it manages to hold its shape as if it were. Also, the design and surface of the object only bears a resemblance to known dropsondes parachutes, leaving just what this object, which has become known as the Acorn, was a mystery. Also, one cannot help but be intrigued by how similar the configuration of the Acorn is to the objects recorded by the crew of the USS Russell. But as we said, it was not alone. 2 other objects were also photographed, and their images made public in April of 2021. The first has become known as the metal BLIMP, and the object appears to have some smaller object suspended underneath it, while the third object has been labelled simply as the sphere. According to George Knapp, all 3 images were recorded within the span of 32 minutes of one another, and all using the same camera. The website debrief.org acquired copies of the image, and from harnessing their metadata, which records information surrounding the capturing of an image, discovered that the images were recorded on March 4, 2019, and that while the Acorn was a still photograph, the BLIMP and the sphere images were categorized as screenshots, meaning it is possible they were taken from a video recording of their encounter. When quizzed about the videos and images, the US Department of Defense spokesperson Susan Goff said in a press release, "I can confirm that the referenced photos and videos were taken by Navy personnel the UAPTF, Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, has included these incidents in their ongoing examinations. As we have said before, to maintain operation security and to avoid disclosing information that may be useful to potential advisories, DoD does not discuss publicly the details of either the observations or the examinations of reported incursions into our training ranges or designated airspace, including those insertions initially designated as UAP. But while this response appears to say very little about the specific incident, we can disseminate a number of things from it. That the DoD and US Navy consider this a genuine sighting of a UFO or UAP, as they prefer to designate them. That in itself is significant, especially for those who remember the days not too long ago when any mention of unidentified objects in the sky was met with complete denial by authorities. It shows a change in military culture to at least publicly acknowledge that military personnel are seeing mysterious objects whilst undertaking their duties. That the DoD does not rule out the possibility that these objects, whatever their origin, may have hostile or other malicious intentions. It is important to note that if military personnel had observed civilians flying in Cessna light aircraft as close to their warships and combat aircraft, the situation could have been very different, particularly with the Western security services so concerned about terrorists using aircraft for suicide attacks. Alternatively, if it was clear the objects in the Russell video were commercial or military drones, then action would likely be taken to down them because of the potential threat to the security and safety of the ship. The DoD is still taking an active interest in investigating the UFO and UAP phenomena. The Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force was approved on August 4, 2020. By then, Deputy Secretary of Defense David Norquist, and its official role is described as being to detect, analyze, and catalogue UAPs that could potentially pose a threat to US national security. In this regard, the task force follows on from the previous Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program that ran between 2007 and 2017. The information of the UAPTF implies that either the cancellation of the former program was considered premature, or that an escalation in sightings prompted the resumption of an official investigation, further enhancing interest in the objects viewed by the Russell and other Navy assets. For if the most advanced military in the world cannot identify them, then who on this earth could? We should also consider that the task force was established after these events. It's important to note, however, that while the US DoD is willing to authenticate these sightings and a handful of others, most notably the 2004 FA-18 sighting that involved submerged objects as well as a flying one, they do not appear to be yet willing to entertain the possibility that these objects are of extraterrestrial or even extra-dimensional origin. Their primary focus appears to be in one of two more earthly explanations. Firstly, that they are some as of yet undiscovered electrical or atmospheric phenomena, skewed or misinterpreted even when using the advanced recording devices of the US Navy. The Russell images, for example, were viewed through light intensifying equipment, and using such devices, even the smallest of light sources can be blown up in size or intensity, which may have affected how they were perceived, although of course the fact remains that something was there in the first place. As for the BLIMP, acorn and sphere, the most likely explanation put forward by the skeptics is that these are some form of commercial balloon with a foil or other reflective material. The images were captured by the backseat of a fast-flying combat aircraft using a phone in his hand, of objects that were relatively stationary at a distance away. As such, the movement of the jet and the pilot's own hand could have skewed the objects or even a single object, making it appear more solid, metallic, and even differently shaped than it really was. But the problem is that surely the Navy would be aware of these things and made similar conclusions, then releasing that conclusion to the public. As it stands now, the images are generating an extreme amount of interest on the internet, and as such, it serves the DoD's interest to dismiss them away. This leads on to the next possibility that the DoD is taking seriously, and that is these are ultra-advanced drones manufactured by a potential adversary such as China, who are using them to spy or even undermine the American public's confidence in their armed forces. It seems like something out of a Tom Clancy spy novel. But no, this is reality, and the US are as guilty as anyone of engaging in such activities. Under Operation Senior Bowl between November 9, 1969, and March 20th, 1971, the US launched a series of LOCKHEED D-21 drones to spy on China's nuclear program. These sleek, futuristic-looking drones could fly in excess of 3 times the speed of sound, and were well in advance of anything China or the Soviet Union, America's biggest adversaries at the time, possessed. To them, this aircraft must have seemed like a spaceship when it first appeared, and the fear amongst US defense circles is that now they are on the receiving end of such technologically advanced spying craft. During the encounters in July 2019, the US warships even adopted a defense posture, limiting their electronic emissions, which could be detected and analysed by an enemy electronic intelligence gathering device. However, even this theory has its problems. For one, if these objects were drones operated by a foreign power, then why did they allow them to be observed by the US for so long? There are a number of reasons why such intelligence gathering aircraft would want to remain undetected, such as not wanting the US Navy to know they have such aircraft, and what they may have learned of American weapon systems. Also, there is the fact that if one of these objects were proven to be a spy drone, it would spark an international incident that could lead to an increase in tension, and even in extreme circumstances, war. Even the US dropped spy flights over hostile territory in favour of using spy satellites for those very reasons. So what then does all this mean for the UFO groups and investigators, who view the Russell footage especially to be one of the most important pieces of UFO footage ever, thanks to DoD authentication? Well, like we mentioned, there is a more open-minded approach to the phenomena, which means that steps are actively being taken to train military personnel on observing and tracking these objects. And maybe that will finally give us an answer as to what they are and where they come from, regardless of if that answer is another country or somewhere else altogether.